Thanks, Emily. Now, this site right behind me near Syracuse University was chosen for the new Veterans Resource Center. Now, Governor Cuomo's ban on plastic bags, just like these, make New York the second state behind California to ban plastic bags. After the passing of the Newhouse School's Dean Brandom on Tuesday, students tied ribbons to the trees just like these. If you're looking for other activities to celebrate Winterfest, you can do everything from cross-country skiing to tobogganing or even tubing. That's right, Keith. We have just learned that David Renz has been sentenced to life in prison without parole. Just behind me is the MBT Bank Stadium, and I'm not sure if you can hear, but fans are getting really excited to cheer on the Syracuse Mets.
That's the sound of celebration. Celebration for the completion of a journey that was never finished. 5 cyclists traveled from Lockerbie, Scotland to Syracuse University to honor all those we lost.
I'm on the promenade at Syracuse University where just a short time ago, the Lockerbie cyclists finished their cycle to Syracuse, completing 3,238 miles.
In no small way, you have made sure that the victims of Pan Am Flight 103 have not been forgotten, and that our community in Lockerbie has not been destroyed by fear. For all you have done, for all you represent, from Lockerbie for Lockerbie, on behalf of a grateful community at home, all I can say from the bottom of my heart is a massive thank you and well done.
For one Remembrance scholar, her interest began 4 years ago when she realized the similarities between herself and one victim. Today, Abby Neuviller represents Thomas Britton Schultz.
Thomas is someone who is very passionate about democracy, who has had similar interests as me, who loved being outside, who was a camp counselor, all these really sort of similar things. I became really intrigued in the program and about each of the individual Syracuse's 35.
That included reaching out to Schultz's parents to learn all she could. However, the tragic event had very different reactions for Schultz's parents, who unfortunately didn't respond to her letter. Instead, Neuviller turned to a 2015 scholar who was the last scholar to communicate with them.
I learned little funny things, like, for example, Jane, Thomas's mother, would never know how much food to prepare for after his friends came back from a night out because he would always have so many people over.
Thomas is just one of the 35 we remember today. In Syracuse, New York, I'm Brenda Koopsen, NCC News. A moment of silence to honor President 41 from the beginning of his presidency to the end of his life. His legacy lives on. For Sean O'Keefe, who worked in Bush's administration at the Pentagon as comptroller and CFO at the Defense Department, and later as the Secretary of the Navy, Bush was president, but he was also a family man, baseball lover, and an encouraging friend.
A knowledge that all of us had that he wasn't asking anybody or expecting anybody to do anything less than what he would do himself. And boy, that was a pretty daunting standard because he was prepared to do whatever it took.
O'Keefe recalls his service as NASA administrator and Bush's reaction following the day after they lost Space Shuttle Columbia. Bush and his wife Barbara drove themselves to the Space Center just to see if there's anything they could do to help.
Nobody asked him to do that. Nobody said, gee, it'd be really nice if you would. He just instinctively knew that would be something that would maybe lend an oar, maybe help a little bit.
O'Keefe and Bush didn't just talk policy. He got to see a side of President 41 that most of us never got to see. O'Keefe recalls meeting Bush for a World Series Houston Astros game.
He sat there and talked about everything under the sun, you know, and then he'd talk about whether they ought to trade so-and-so or somebody else ought to be coming in or why they aren't stepping up or whatever. Made you feel like you were just sitting there talking to a good friend.
O'Keefe says if Bush could give a word of advice for the future, it would be
kind to each other would be his advice, and do the right thing. Do everything you possibly can in order to make a situation better than the way you found it.
It's happening in other states, and now it could happen right here in Onondaga County. Big box retailers like Target and Walmart are suing to lower its tax bills. The Targets in Manlius, Cicero, and Camillus filed lawsuits so they can try and lower their tax bills. Now, if that happens, then what? The Onondaga County assessor says in his own words that if Target wins their lawsuit, then it will increase what other taxpayers must pay by a dollar amount, and it won't impact the county services that taxpayers receive that much.
To him, if other businesses try to copy Target's lawsuit and receive lower taxes, then it will have a larger impact on the county. Target's trying to argue that they should be taxed for what their store would be worth if it was vacant and not what it's valued at with all of its merchandise inside. Target told us that it is committed to supporting the communities it does business in, and it wants to ensure their properties are fairly assessed. Follow us on Twitter at NCC News for updates on the court case. After a long battle among legislators in Albany, the New York State budget is finally in. Here's all the most important things left in and out of the budget. The budget comes in at just over $175 billion and includes several key components. But first, what's not in the budget? Legalizing recreational marijuana didn't make it to the final budget after lawmakers couldn't reach a decision. However, given more time to talk about it, lawmakers could change the legal status of marijuana through separate legislation. Now on to what's included in the budget. Drivers traveling into some of Manhattan's busiest areas will now be charged a toll starting in 2021. A similar policy in London saw a traffic drop of nearly 30%. The funds raised by the toll would go to the city's MTA, cutting down on traffic and repairing some public infrastructure. Also in the budget, New York becomes the second state to ban plastic bags. Single-use plastic bags will no longer be a part of your trip to the grocery store. Individual counties do have the option to charge 5 cents for paper bags, and stores are adding reusable bags to their lines. And lastly, there is some criminal justice reform in this budget. Alleged criminals will no longer be detained for some nonviolent crimes and misdemeanors before they are tried, and they won't have to post bail either. State lawmakers put together a budget with several reforms, but there's still more to come. That's all we have for you today. Make sure to find all of our content on our NCC News website. I'm Brenda Koopsen. Have a great night, Syracuse.